Okay, team, so now we're back. This segment of the video, we're still continuing to build our AI bot, Jerry, which is going to help us out in the help desk. As you can see here in this video, we're going to style up our help desk app here in Power Apps. You can see I'm doing very light branding. I got the title here. I got a little sprinkle of the orange and the sprinkle of the buttons, and that orange is going to be our branded color. You will also notice that in our chat, we have very distinct formatting for when we send the bot information and when the bot responds back. The AI bot responds back with helpful suggestions. That is formatted now. We're going to do that in this video. And also in this video, what we do behind the scenes and in Power Automate is show how do we get short-term memory using the bot. So I can do things like I'm having issues with the mouse. It responds back friendly. It knows exactly what operating system I'm working in because that's part of the prompt. And then we do short references. We don't have to keep repeating ourselves. And it responds back with try to help out with suggestions. I can try this as a user and say, nope, that didn't work. And notice how I can speak in plain English and just say still not working. It understands the context of when I say it is still not working. What else? It knows what it gave me to try, and it comes up with another set of steps to try. So this is programmed to troubleshoot Windows 10, Windows 11, VPN for any connect, as well as MFA issues that I have, specifically for Microsoft 365 Business Edition. All of that is covered in this video. Let's get started. Okay, so in this video, we're going to do is go ahead and start styling our chat. We got some functional things that we have to take care of, and we also want to make sure that we're able to provide the GPT API chat history, meaning that all the conversation that's happening between the associate that's having a help desk issue and chat GPT or the GPT 3.5 API model responding with recommendations on how to solve that issue. We want to save that and keep that in context so that way the API is remembering everything it mentioned. So the first things first, if you look at this, actually before I close this out, you notice that we're chatting with the API. And again, this is the GPT 3.5 model. It's the similar API endpoint that is used by ChatGPT. We're just incorporating this into the Power Platform. And what we have here is the Power App form that's interacting, and we built this in the previous video. So if you're starting with this video, go back to the previous video for context. But as we're communicating, we can tell that, you know, if you can see that little line right on the batteries, that lets me know there's more content, right? And there's a bullet point number 1, they're probably going to 5 or something. But we're not seeing everything. The other thing with this gallery, again, this is just a standard Power App vertical gallery. With this gallery, we're not leveraging the best real estate, the best use of our real estate. We have all these white spaces in between them. And then also it's not clear on, if you're just scanning this and not really reading it, it's not clear what were the texts or the messages sent by the user and which one of these are the responses. So, you know, and obviously these will alternate. So let's go ahead and get this going. And we're going to pepper in a little light branding. Then we'll jump over to Power BI to kind of get things buttoned up. The Power Automate to get things buttoned up on that side. So when dealing with these real-time chat and just in conversations, right? And what we want to do, the goal is to mimic text messaging when and where possible, very similar to what we get on iPhone and Android, right? So in order to do that, we need a different gallery. This is our standard gallery. We need a flexible vertical gallery. So I think it's called, let me just do gallery. We need a flexible height gallery, and we actually want that blank. So we want a blank flexible height gallery, and we drop that on there. And basically what we want to do is move all of our work from the old gallery to the new. So what I'm going to do is just go to, let's rename this a gal history old, and put a new name on our new guy, gal history. And basically what I want is to copy this label, which is really straightforward. So I just copy this label and then paste it there. Okay. And now, I had to select the template and then do a Control V, I think. Huh. Okay, so I guess we have to manually create this. Okay, so first things first, let me prime up the other things. So let me go to the item history here. We're going to use that collections history, right? And then for a label, we're going to add in our text label and basically have it display the message, which it's doing already, right? So once we get that in place, I think we can go ahead and delete our old gallery. And let's just slide our new one into position. And what I probably want to do is adjust this template to take up that much real estate, get my label inside here, and probably put a background color on the label. And actually what I want to do is alternate this background color. So if I go to the label and go to the field property, I'm going to put a condition on there. And again, we have that role or the user property that let us know which message was sent by the AI and which message was sent by the current user. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just capture this and paste this in Notepad. And then once I have that pasted in Notepad, let's go find the blue color. And basically, if it's the AI, we want blue. So we just use this item.user, and if that equals user, then we want the orange, else we want the blue. And then close that parenthesis there. So now I have alternate. This is beautiful. This is shaping up rather nicely, actually. So the other thing we want to do is position this label, right, in different position. Oh, this is the old label. Hold on, let me get rid of these. Old labels getting in the way. So now what we want to do is position this label. So we kind of want to alternate this. So if I look at the X coordinate of the current position is 15, and this position, I want the Y's to be the same. The only thing I want to change is, yeah, I'm okay with let's just do a 5Y and a 142X. Okay, so if it's the user, we want the X coordinate to be 142, else let's just call it 12. And it's the same logic, right? All right, so if the user sent the message, we want 142, else we want 12. Let's just see what that looks like. Perfect. And this is just going to give me some alternating space. And now what I can do, you see things get kind of jumbled here, so I probably can add like a line height. I don't know, can you do line heights on, let's just do vertical. I like middle. Is there a line height for labels? Here we go. It's buried. So line height, let's just do a 1.5. What does that look like? Yeah, it looks good. So just do a 1.5, and then the bottom padding just to kind of give it some breathing room. And basically what I'm trying to do is set it up for spacing that's going to work well in all scenarios. I don't know what happened here. Your computer, why is that so far up? Do I have to do a 12 margin, a 12 padding on top and bottom? See, that's weird. Now, here's another thing. When you see weird, odd things like this, test it out in publishing mode before you make any adjustments. Because one of the things I noticed that when you're editing, or especially with the flexible height gallery, when you're making changes, the real results are only shown like either in preview or in publish mode. So here we got a decent format. I'm still high here. I don't know why. I don't know why that's the case. Let's just see. Let's just make sure this thing works as expected. So, okay, let me try that. And then hit enter. And now it should kind of give us, yeah, see, I'm still not getting what I need. Oh, I think we're missing one more setting. We need, on this label, I think we have to have the height auto. So there's an attribute that's auto height. Yeah, we have to turn this on. I think it should work as expected. So those are the two things that you need. Yeah, look at that. There we go. Now we're looking better. So now if I do this in preview, Yeah, this flows really nice, and you can tell I'm maximizing my real estate. I'm not using unneeded white space because I had to guess on the template height to accommodate all scenarios. I'm allowing the flexible height to achieve that. Okay, so now we have that in place. Our gallery is functional. Now this is where I consider a functional experience because it's able to display the entire message. Now what I want to do is pepper in a very light branding. And this is my go-to when I go to branding. We work with many clients, right? And when we build these, we don't want to go crazy. So these are the tips and tricks that I use with branding. And you can pretty much brand any form, and it's scalable, right? It's not something that you have to touch and brand each and every component, which is a no-no. So what we're going to do with branding, we're going to do a very light touch. So the first thing we do is change the theme to, this is my go-to right here. Go under the office categories of themes and go ahead and select gray. And what that's going to do, that's just going to make everything mute on the canvas, giving you room to add in brand. And then I brand my buttons. So here I'll just copy the button here. I'm going to get a little fancy here. Put a border radius on here of 3, right? And then... And what that's going to do, that's just going to put a little, nice little curve on my buttons without being too crazy. Before I color those buttons, let's bring in a logo. So I did create a logo for this. Zoom out here a little bit. So basically what I need is to put something, some type of header here with a brand. And my go-to is really just to throw like a rectangle in here. Initially, I was using this like the background color, which is something you still can do. But I found it to be a little bit more, I guess, slick or modern looking just by doing like a rectangle, like a horizontal rule. And I used to go with like a 4 height, something not too crazy. I'm a huge fan of pinstripe. It's just very thin stripes. That's a little bit thicker than what I normally would do. But I do want to bring in a brand color. So in order to bring in a brand color for this scenario, I'm going to actually bring in a logo that I created. And I actually created this logo using AI, text image generator. And then here, I'm just going to select that from my desktop, right? And based on, let me just fill this in. And based on that logo, let me zoom in because that looks kind of wonky. There we go. Just make it tight. So based on this, we kind of have like this orange and gray and stuff like that. So I'm going to actually use the orange as the brand color. And I'm going to just make this up. Obviously, you can, what you want to do is use the right hex color and all this other stuff provided to you by the marketing team. So I'm going to just try to eyeball this and pick a color that I think is going to be closer. I think it's a little bit redder, right? There we go. Right. So this is going to be my brand orange. I'll just copy that. Save that off into Notepad. That's going to be my hex value for that. And basically, now that I have that, I color the border. I also color the buttons with the same color. I make sure these buttons do not have a border on them. So here I'm going to turn the border off so that you just give you a nice crisp edge on that one. And then and this is my primary button. And then for my secondary button or non-primary button, so in this scenario, the cancel, let's call this clear. So this is going to clear the form out. So on this clear, I will do the inverse. So I color the border with the branded color. And I also color the text with the branded color. And then the white field for my non-primary is always white. And just with those two touches, right, the border and then the buttons, you kind of have a brand. So now the last thing I want to do is throw a label in here, kind of give it a title. And then the labels, I usually go with like a 16 or 18. So let's do 16 here. And then also notice how I position my label in the 0, 0 coordinates, meaning the XY coordinate is zeros. And then I just use padding to ensure that I'm aligned, kind of give it some breathing room from the left. and I can play with the padding. And that way I can always be spot on. So anything that I want to left justify, I'm not trying to eyeball this. I'm scooting it all the way over to a x coordinate 0 and then giving everything a 16 padding, and that would put me right on the dime to make sure that I'm lined up. All right, so those are little tips and tricks that I use. You should probably do like a semi-bold or a bold on that. Okay, so we're good there. I think that's enough for this. Now, all right, and then I'll do the same for the text box. Just do a pinstripe border. All right, that's cool. All right, so now that we have that, let me just go play here. Just make sure this thing's responding again. And we probably have to put our logic in for our clear. All right, so this is kind of going off the deep end, because we still have to give it a system prompt, and we also have to give it a we have to store the chat history, right? So let's go ahead and wire up our clear, and then we'll jump over into Power Automate to actually go ahead and put the other logic in that we need for the logic that we need in for the AI piece. All right, so for this one, this is simply clear history and then reset the text box. Okay, so, and then I can clear this out, and then it clears and resets everything. Okay, perfect. All right, so our UI is done for now. This is definitely getting us to a point where we're functional. And now what we want to do is switch over to Power Automate. And now we're in Power Automate. Two things we need to do. One, we have to give it a system prompt, meaning that you have to tell it the personality that it has and its role. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a variable to hold the prompt. And we have a lot of flexibility here. And this is something that may get tweaked over time, you know, as you kind of grow this this help desk. Like, say for example, you have a new application, or you're releasing a new site, or you know, you finished a migration to a new system like an HR system, and you want to create a chatbot that will allow users to answer these questions without without getting someone involved. So basically what you would do is have all the FAQs about the new system that you have, and you will load it inside of this prompt. You know, given that is within a certain size, right? Because this is not infinite size, because you know how much information you feed to the chat GPT depends on how many tokens you use. And with 3.5, I want to say the token max is 4,096. With GPT-4, the token max I think is 25,000. So we definitely would have a lot more headroom once we move over to GPT-4. But as of this video, that API is not available, so we're using 3.5. So what we want to do with this prompt, let's go ahead and store this inside of a variable. We just hard code this into Power Automate. Obviously, you can store this inside like a SharePoint list and have it read in dynamically. So let's, oops, that's the wrong thing. 1 second. Let's initialize another variable. And let's go ahead and name this here. Let's call it system prompt. And I actually have a prompt here already written out. And basically, when I'm telling it its role, I'm telling it that it's a system engineer, and it supports Windows 10, Windows 11, and it has it's going to support VPN and the use of VPNs AnyConnect, which is a third party. And then it also supports MFA, and the use of MFA is Microsoft 365 Business Edition. And I went to the level to specify the version of M365 because there is both consumer and business versions, government and some other ones flavors as well. But I just want to make sure that it's honed in for the business edition. Okay, you're a system engineer for the help desk. Maybe we give it a personality, right? So say something like, okay, so what I've done here was kind of give it a persona, and really you just give it the information that it needs at its lowest common denominator level, and it's smart enough to, if someone asks, what is your name? Or it may say something like, you know, my name is X, you can go ahead and add that in. If there's any question about its address, its location, the company it works for, its contact information, extension. It will have all this readily available. So you kind of give it the pieces that you need. And this prompt is something that you grow into, right? So you start with the basics. I knew better to add company name, address, email, because I've been playing around with this, and it would just guess at its email. It would guess at its address and stuff like that, or it would just make things up, or it would default to I'm an AI model and I'm not trained with XYZ. So you want to kind of help it with its identity so it knows how to respond. The other thing is, I just add a little bit of uniqueness to that. The other one thing, you can kind of give it a personality, like if it would remain professional, or if it would answer in sarcasm, or if it tried to be funny or something like that. So let's just kind of give it a personality and say you are okay. So what I did, I gave it the personality, kind of give it a little personality. Say, you love the joke, but you keep the conversation light. You need to be empathetic because the user may be frustrated because the current issue may keep them from being productive. So, let's see what it does with that. And again, this is just things that you add to it. Treat it as a new hire in your department or organization, and kind of give it to what it needs to do, even a personality, because it is artificial, right? So once we have that, the next thing we need to do is create let's just make sure this prompt works before, let's kind of build this up in steps. So if I look at the API call here, there's the content. So then we have this message. Where are we doing with the message? Oh, the message is what was received, right? So let's put in another array. Let's just call this another object. We're going to have to change this eventually, but let's, for now, let's just do this. So basically what I'm doing is put another record in the array for a post request, which is the system record. And at first we were testing without this, right? And now you can see that when I add something simple like, okay, let me give that a try, it's not going to go, or another sample, it's not going to go into this poem or this weird, random statement. Everything is going to be in the context of being a help desk professional, with a jokey, light personality that's empathetic and understanding that users may be frustrated because they have an issue and it's keeping them from being productive. So now everything that we feed to it is going to be under that context or within that lens. So let's go ahead and save this all, and let's just give this a test. And if this works out, then what we can do in the next video is start to build up our chat history. Okay, so let's just look at this in preview mode. And again, I didn't change the signature of that Power Automate, so I'm not going to refresh the Power Automate inside of Power Apps. I'm going to just go straight to trying to test this out. So let's just say my mouse, very generic. Okay, so here we got a response back. Notice what it says. I'm sorry to hear. So, it's showing some empathy, physical mouse or a touchpad. All right, so now it's responding back. That would be more than happy to help. So what's the issue you're having with the mouse? Is that it's not moving the cursor. Notice the response that we're getting here. The reason why we're getting this weird, unintelligent response or dumb response is because it has no context from the beginning statement to my existing. So it's treating everything in orange as a brand new chat, right? So now what we have to do, I was going to wait into the next video, but I think we can pull this off in this video, right? So we should move forward. So what we have to do, let's save this information in chat history. And then anytime that we send a message, we send along the history as well as the new message, as well as the prompt. And then that way it has context of these short statements, and it's I'm referencing everything that I had out above. And this is exactly what ChatGPT does, right? And again, we're building this in the context instead of it going to the internet in the wild and coming back with random statements, we have a locked in prompt that's forcing it to keep everything in the context of a help desk. And now we need to keep everything in the context of the current user. Okay, so in order to do that, there's two things we have to do. So in the back end, I've already created this list, a very simple list called chat history. So there's a title, which is going to be the user's email, the message that was sent, the user type, who said that message. Was that the user stating that, or was that the AI, artificial intelligence, stating that? And then we'll keep all that. Because this is a SharePoint list, our created date, modified date, created by, modified by is all going to be taken care of for us. So we're going to leverage that created thing to kind of keep all the messages in sequential order, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we have chat history. So we go to our Power Automate. And the first thing we want to do is to get history, which is going to be empty initially, right? So I just do my get items, and this is all standard, Power Automate to SharePoint. So I get items, go ahead and select that from the history list. And I definitely want to put a filter on this because I only want the history pertaining to the current user. So this is where I filter the title field, which is going to hold my email address, with the email passed in. And that's why we did, when we built this Power Apps and we defined these inputs for the trigger from Power Apps to Power Automate, we made sure that they pass in the email for this very reason. And we're going to use that as the primary key. And then ordered by would just be that created date field in ascending order. Okay, so that's the only filter that we need. And let's just put this a more meaningful action title. All right, so get chat history items. That's going to gather that. The other thing we have to do is store. Notice what we're doing in our API. We're actually building this array, right? And this array really has three main components. It has the system role, which is the identity of the chat. It has the messages passed by the user, and it has the messages passed by the assistant or the AI prompt or the AI, right? So we need to, it's almost like a play, right? So if you're reading the script for a play and you have like the actor's name and then their part, and then the other actress or actress name and their part, that's exactly what we build in here. So we're going to have to replicate this dynamically and build this dynamically, and then just send that dynamic array as a variable to the API. So in order to do that, since we're dealing with an array, we want to initialize an empty array. We call this var messages. And this is going to be an array. And for right now, for initializing, that's going to be empty. Okay. So then we're going to have to set the array with both the history. So the sequence of, I think the ordering is important here, right? So you want to set it with the prompt, you want to set it with the chat history, and then you want to set it with the new message that came in. And with all of that information, the API will now be able to make a very intelligent response. So let's go ahead and right before we make the API call, let's go ahead and build up let's add in our system to the array. So we do that by appending array. So use this append the array variable, and that's going to be our message. And the value is going to be, again, it's going to be that record. All right. So now that's the syntax for this. So we're going to do system prompt, which is going to be this guy. And again, the role is system according to the OpenAI documentation. And then there's the content property, and then we set the prompt variable there. All right, so that's going to be that. The next thing we want to do, this is our, where's our for each? So, okay, so this is getting our chat. So now what we want to do is load all of these items into an array. So again, we do another append. All right, so now we're going to append the history, and it's going to follow very similar notation, right? So we have the role, we have the content, and then the content is going to be off, so chat history items we store the content in this message column. And as soon as we select that, you see it creates an apply each because it has to apply for each history item. Actually, I'm going to rename this strategically without any spaces because I need to use this in a formula or an expression, right? Right. So now when we do that, if I mouse over here, I just want to make sure it takes on my rename. And I also want to pay attention to the syntax. So the role, this gets tricky, right? Because in the list, in the SharePoint list, the role will be sometimes the assistant, and then the role will sometimes be the user. So I need to be able to determine that, and I should be able to determine that by, again, if we go back to our chat history, by this user type. And this is a single line text field, and it's, in Power Automate, I would specify the keyword to determine if it's user or AI. So here I'm going to do user type. I have to build an expression. So I would say if equals, and now I need to so I need to check and see if user type. So I need to follow this syntax. So items, apply each history item. All right, I'm gonna have to pull this out to Notepad. And that's the thing, like that window is just so tight to type it in, and it's super easy to make syntax errors. Sorry. So now if I do apply each history item, question mark, now user type, right? So if user type equals user, then respond with user else assistant. No, let's just put AI, right? So we're only going to have two types here. We're going to have the user, or we're going to have AI. And then that's how we'll determine. So hopefully this is right. Just double checking all my closed parentheses to make sure I have it right. Okay, so now if I put this here and hit OK, all right, hopefully that, fingers crossed, hopefully that works. Okay. All right, so now we have that. So that's just going to build this up dynamically. It's going to dynamically determine the role, and it's going to have the message based on that role, and it's going to continue building this up. So far we're looking fantastic. So now that we have our history built, the last thing we need to do is to apply the current message. So now we need one more append to that array. Now I know this will always be user, and then I think I made a mistake. Not here, but this made me realize a mistake in the previous step. All right, so this will always be the user. The content would be the most recent message sent, which would be this from the Power Automate, right? All right, so here's my mistake. In this one here, I can't just make up names, and I need to watch my casing, right? So in that if statement, let's bring up my notepad again. In this if statement, this has to be lowercase user, and this needs to be keyword assistant, right, as mentioned in the OpenAI docs. So if I go to the chat and scroll down, yeah, you see that system role assistant. I think you can change these, but we're not going to change them because that's one less thing we have to worry about. And we're going to do this verbatim, right? Because we want this thing to work. We don't want to be guessing, right? All right. So now if I bring up Notepad, we need to update that expression to make sure that we're 1000%. All right. So now we have that. Let's copy this. Okay. And then, oops, wrong one. Now I just want to click on this expression. It brings it up in here. Do a Control A to delete the old stuff. Paste in the new stuff. Click Update. Mouse over to make sure my update's there, and it's not. Okay, fine. Remove it because I have it in my copy history, right? Now mouse over, make sure we're 100%, and that looks a lot better. Okay, perfect. So now we have everything accounted for. We're going to make the API call, and now we actually need to save everything to the history. And we can do that after the API call. So basically, I need to create items, right? So I do a create item. The first one, I'm going to create the message that was sent, the new message that was sent by the user. And then I'm going to create a second item of the message that was responded by the AI. So we do help desk here. List name, let's go to history. So create new message item in history. It's a little bit verbose, but you know, when you read these in the collapse manner, you want these to make sense, right? So the title will always be the current user's email, or the email that was sent over by Power Apps. And then the message would be, in this case, the message sent by Power Apps. And then the user type would be user, capital U. Again, this is what my my expression is looking for. So I have to make sure that I use this. It's going to be case sensitive, so I want to make sure that matches. And then I do another create item with the and then I'm going to say something like create. And again, I don't have to do this before the call, right? Because that whole transaction is done. I just need to record it. So the next time they send a message, this whole history or this whole chat transaction is recorded. So let's just go help desk here, and then history here. And then in this one, let's go ahead and put the email for the current user. Use the search so it's faster. The message in this case will actually be the response back from, okay, actually, I need to move this down because the variable, remember we in our previous video, that response is wrapped into an array object from the responding back from the API. So let's just move these down. And I extract that here, and I set it inside of this API response. So that's what you want here, API response as a variable, or else it's going to wrap that into a for each, and we don't want that. And then for user type, we can just say assistant. And I'm purposely putting these in a different casing than my API readout, so that way, if I don't know, I just to kind of keep things separate, because they are two separate things, even though they represent the same value. There are two separate systems that are using those. Okay, so now I have this. Let's just save it off and then give it a test. Okay, oops, we got an error. So let's just see what we got. Repetition action, apply each history. Oh, it looks like history reference by inputs action is incorrect. So let's go. Oh, this must be. See, this is why. Yeah, so that's a typo. You probably saw that, didn't you? So history spelled incorrectly. So ORY. So make sure we update it. ORY. Okay. Save this again. Hopefully the red dot goes away. We still have a red dot. Why do we have a red dot? You may break your Power Apps trigger flow with changes needed. That's a warning. Okay, we got all warnings. Okay, so that's fine. So now let's go ahead and test this out. So this is, get out of here. All right, and go back to Power Apps. And again, I didn't change the signature on this, so I should be able to clear this out. Let's look at our history list. Okay, this is empty. It's not the updated form, is it? So hello. All right. Message fail. Parse invoker. Manual output. Cannot find a valid connection. Reference. SharePoint. Okay, so we probably should refresh this because it has an issue with that. Oh, because maybe added, because we did not have a SharePoint action part of that, the body of it. And for some odd reason, it detects that, which is interesting. All right, so now we're going to refresh this. What's this error here? This error, this item.message. Why would that have changed? Hold on, let me save this. Let me refresh, save this. And that's the other thing. Sometimes these errors could not be reflecting the latest and greatest, which also makes this tricky. See if it throws an error message back. Okay. All right. So yeah, we just had to refresh that connection. From some odd reason, even though we didn't change the signature, we updated the body of it and it had an issue with that. Okay. So now if I go to the help desk, the chat history, this is my test and this is right? So this is responding back and it's doing what it needs to do. Okay. So that part of is working. So now what we want to do is to make sure, and I don't think we did this, we have to pass all of that to the API itself, right? So now, once this kind of comes back, in the API, we still have our hard-coded system and user, and now we want to replace all of that with the message array. And we're storing all of that in this messages variable, right? So now let's just save that. Yeah, and I didn't add any new actions, right? So we should be good to go here. So now let's just say, let's clear this out. All right, so now I have an issue with the mouse. And there's a couple things I want to double check, right? Okay, so I got a reply back. So I want to double check the history to make sure that we're still writing there. And we are. So I'm having an issue with the mouse. Okay, hi there. And then that looks correct. We don't write the system prompt, right? That's not part of the history. But we do pass the prompt every time we consume the history. You know, we append the prompt or append the history and then append a new message every time it goes back. So it should have this down. The other thing I do want to confirm, and I want to look at the transaction details for this Power Automate. And what I want to do is double check the format that we're sending to the API. So I want to go to this last run history here at 1:45 p.m. and then scroll down, look at the body of that, and then just make sure that it is sending the correct information. So if I go back down to this API here and really let's inspect this content, right? So let's actually pull this out to Notepad so we can get a better view of this. All right, so this is my system, right? So that's the system. Okay, and then that's the role. Got it. And then now we have the response. Okay, so now let's generate a lot of back and forth. So okay, so hi there. I'm sorry to have it say what seems to be the problem. They say when. All right. So again, what we want to do is say minimum follow-up as possible to ensure that the history, the context, the chat history, which gives the AI context, is being captured. Okay, so this it sounds like an issue. Maybe definitely look into. Here are a few troubleshooting. First, try this. Unplug the mouse and plug it back in. Sometimes a simple reset is good. If that doesn't work, try using the USB port, a different USB port. These are actually really good troubleshooting options. Use a different mouse in your computer problems. All right, awesome. Again, so notice what I'm doing. I'm just doing a simple reference to something that it should already have reference to. And I'm doing submit, and let's just see how it responds. And this would be a telltale to ensure that the history is being captured. Let's see. I see. Thanks for letting me know. Let's proceed with the next step. Can you please try using a different mouse? And then what's that, number 3? Yep. if the issue persists, so it's smart enough so it would say, okay, this is great. This is great. So it seemed like the context is there. So let's just do one more validation, right? So we go back and we look at our history here. And with that back and forth, I should see, let's see. So here's another thing I want to take a look at before we go into confirming the history. It's the token count. Because I'm grabbing all of that history, at one point in time, and maybe we should build this in the next video, at one point in time, we need to clear the history out, right? Or save it. And that's what ChatGPT does, because we're going to hit a limit with these tokens. And again, for 3.5 Turbo, our token max is going to be 4096, I want to say, right? But if we were using 4.0, GPT-4, I think the max token is 25,000. You know, that's when we can start loading up documents, right? And using that for prompt. All right, so, okay, so 438, so we can do 10x these messages before we run into an issue with tokens, right? And that's really depending on how verbose the AI response is, or how verbose the issue description is by the user. But when I look at this section here, what I really want to see is this array. And I just want to make sure, one, the order is right? So that's the prompt. And then I said, I'm having an issue. AI said, hi there, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, when I move the mouse, they said, okay, that sounds like an issue that we can definitely, okay, I try number 2. And then, you know, it ended there. And then the next one will append the latest and greatest. So now if I look at this right here, and again, to really check, you know, confirm that these histories are being captured and isolated per user, I probably want to log in with a test account and then just kind of confirm that that user conversation is siloed for that particular user and it doesn't bleed over with this Clardo user. And then again, you know, like I mentioned before, we probably should build out another layer into this to where we can save off the chat. So outside of that, I'm actually pretty happy with this. I'm happy with the formatting. The only thing I don't like, right? So okay, let's respond to this. Thanks for letting me know. Let's proceed. Same problem. This will help us determine. Okay, so what do you want me to do? Use a different mouse. Okay. Get a replacement. Now, when I'm testing this, it's not programmed to do replacement. So let's just see how it responds. But I am confirming that the original issue was resolved by swapping out to a different mouse. So let's just see what it does next. And again, this is how you test these things. You know, in this type of test, you know, I don't know the technical term for the test. Like when you're testing for something that the system may not be programmed to do. Again, now you're dealing with artificial intelligence, so you really want to see where it takes it and what boundaries it tends to bleed over, and that helps you confirm and sharpen up your prompt, right? So this type of testing, and that's the other thing, when you get into testing AI and start testing these systems that we're building with the Power Platform with AI peppered inside of it, your use cases become a little bit different, right? Because now you're testing out of bounds, or I don't know if it's red team testing, but you're doing some type of testing that may go beyond the scope of the prompt that will help you define if you need to tighten up your prompt a little bit more. So in this one, it says, I'm glad to hear that a different mouse works for you. Now, regarding the replacement of your old mouse, if it's still under warranty, you can definitely provide the replacement. However, if it's not under warranty, you know, replacement is a new one. Can you provide me with a brand model that you have, and I can check and see if available replacement options or recommend some. Oh, this is awesome. All right, so I have cool. Let's see where it takes us here. It is a Amazon and all right, typical giving way too much information, right, than what's requested. But let's just see where it takes us. And notice how this feels like you're talking to a human, right? I mean, it's it's not as black and white. There's definitely some color there. There's a little personality there. This is I think this type of situation would be fantastic. Okay, so here we go. Great. I'm looking to a replacement 3-button USB hardwire soft touch for you. Let me just confirm your shipping address and contact information. Is your shipping address still 555? Can you be reached at the same phone number or email address on file? Now this is weird. See, this is where we have to tighten up our problem. That's why you do these types of tests. It doesn't realize that this is its address. All right, let's see how it figures out its way out outside of this pickle. Okay, so this is interesting. Now, this is the part where you're going to have, we're going to have to build out a part of AI, a part of the prompt, right? So this is what we need. I'm just thinking out loud. This is what we need. We're going to have to figure out, how do you allow it to do its thing, and then start to give it detailed instructions like, okay, if you're replacing the equipment, yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I don't want to create all these scenarios where if you're doing this, then respond this. If you're doing that, then respond this. If you're doing, XYZ, respond this. Because then it becomes you can't account for all the conditions, right? And maybe we want to grow into this. So let's look into this. So we'll look at this. So let's set up the stage for what we need to look at for the next video. All right, and this is actually all over the place, but I think this is going to be fantastic. This is actually going to allow us to pry a little bit deeper and really understand where AI needs to hand off to a human, right? Because it's not going to be programmed to start shipping stuff out. And even if it was, even if it had that capability, we wouldn't want it to do that without some type of human oversight, right? Because, you can have people who are replacing laptops, and then that's cost of replacement equipment, cost and shipping and all this other good stuff. And there needs to be some type of validation, which can be assumed, the fact that you are validated against the Office 365. So we know that you're not just someone off the street, but are you authorized to get equipment, or do we need manager approval and stuff like that? So what we don't want is, so here's our user. Let's just pick up the process where we at now. So we have our user, and it's interacting with the chat bot via Power Apps, right? So we got this nice form and this button that's submitting stuff. And then the AI, I don't know how you do AI. Do you something like that, right? So the AI is going to field a lot of this back and forth stuff, right? And you can see the benefit of this already, right? Basic, unplug the mouse, replay, try, really getting the user to think about other options, right, before a human getting in. So that frees up this whole second level of support, which is all humans, right? And you can, especially when there's outages, and we talked about this before in our initial video, that the value add of having this layer here surface all of that. Now the question is, how do you get where are the keywords needed to tell the AI to say, okay, when you encounter this, instead of sending the message back, right? It's actually going to be here, sorry. So instead of sending the message back to Power Apps to display to the user, I need, based on this keyword, or it could be an and, send the message back, but also flag it, embed a keyword with brackets or some unique identifier that triggers a flow or a process that gets a human involved. And we need to figure out a generic way to do this and not something that's finite, right? Or if it is finite, we have these 4 or 5 options, but then a catch-all that says, okay, if it doesn't meet this, then put an issue in the queue that flags it. So maybe what we would do is make something generic that says, okay, for equipment replacement, respond with your message, but also include every message in double brackets, replace equipment. And for password reset, respond back with a message, but also include in that message the keyword token reset password in double brackets, right? And then what that would do, that would force us to trigger another process. So if you look at this flow, and I'm teeing this up for us to kind of do a deep dive into this for next week. I'm sorry, in the next video. So if you look at this flow, of course, all of that instruction is going to be here in the prompt. And we have to be clear on tell it that, dude, like this is your address. Don't assume that the current user has address. But this response here, when we parse the JSON, right now we're just sending back, we're parsing that out and we're just sending back a message. I wonder if there's a way that we can get more information out of this JSON, right? Or, I don't know. We have to figure it out. So I'm gonna have to dig deep into like the OpenAI docs for this API to see what do we have to tell it in the prompt to do something, right? And it could just be include that token as part of the message body. And what we would do in that scenario is strip that token out before sending it back to the user. And if we detect that token, then this is where, we send that message back to them. But then we also do XYZ based on the token that the AI responded back with. And I think that's going to make this thing super smart. So I really like that. So let's tee that up for the next video. But for right now, as you can see, this is actually fantastic. It looks decent. I'm going to say it looks great, but it looks decent. So we have to do that. So maybe we'll do the token from the next video. And then the video after that, let's get better with our chat history management. Allow them to say save chat or start new. And just like the OpenAI chat GPT window, the chat history is stored here. You click on it, you see everything there. But it gives you a new context to start a different conversation. So I think that will be super cool. So we'll look at exploring two. So I think we have our game plan at least outlined out of what the next two videos are, and then we kind of go from there. If there's anything else, any other scenarios that you can see in the context of this AI help desk bot, leave it in the chat, and then we can go ahead and add that to the series. All right, talk to you soon.